Hi. Unless you live under a rock, you've undoubtedly heard the term child abuse. You've probably have also heard terms such as spousal abuse, elder abuse, financial abuse, emotional abuse, sexual abuse, and many others. Today I would like to talk to you about a type of abuse that you've probably have never heard of, but that as parent of an addicted child, the chances are that you are a victim of. If you Google the term parent abuse, the Google algorithm is going to ask you if you mean abuse by parents or child abuse. If you try to find parent abuse in any of the media outlets, you're not going to find much luck because it doesn't match the narrative that they've been telling us. So, what is parent abuse? Parent abuse, also known as CPA, or child parent abuse, or child on parent abuse, is a serious problem. How serious? Every case of parricide is the killing of one's own parents, is preceded by CPA. But let's look at how common it actually is, shall we? Voluntary surveys of parents reporting violence that's so severe that they had to report it, 9% of the time, the parents were the victims and the aggressor was their child, generally between 12 and 24 years old. But there's a problem. Parents don't report their own children. There's many reasons for this. Sometimes we are ashamed or embarrassed about the fact that our children are abusing us. Sometimes we're trying to protect them from the ramifications of their own actions, the consequences of the abuse that they've committed against us. And there's many other reasons that go along with it. Sometimes we're afraid to report them. More detailed studies that correlated reports with criminal statistics and everything else indicate that as high as 21% of all U.S. families, that's more than 1 in 5, 21% of all U.S. families experience child on parent abuse, or CPA. The scary thing for us as parents of children with addiction is those same studies show that we have a much, much, much higher incidence of it than the general population does. Fully 10% of all domestic violence cases that are prosecuted, the victim is the parent and the child is the abuser. This is so common, in fact, that we can break it down further. 97% of the time, the primary victim is the mother, and 83% of the time, the primary abuser is the teenage to young adult son, aged 12 to 24 years old. If you remember that parents don't like to report on their own children, it should come as no surprise that the domestic violence had to be severe in order for it to be prosecuted. How severe? Up to and including hospitalizations, threats and attacks with knives and guns. This matches really well with what we know from criminology. In the United States, 22% of all murders are where one family member murders another member of their immediate family. 41% of the time, this is where one spouse kills the other spouse. A husband kills a wife or vice versa. 27% of the time, this is where a parent or both parents kill one or more of their children. What about the remaining 32%? The remaining 32% is where the child kills either their siblings or the child kills their parents, known as parricide. And the most common of those is where the child kills their parents. You might be saying, wow, those numbers are shocking and it must be really horrible for those parents, but that could never happen to me. My child could never do anything like that to me. There's two sad realities I'd like you to keep in mind as we continue forward in this study. The first is that it is extremely rare to find any household where addiction is present and abuse is not. Extremely rare. The other sad reality I would like you to keep in mind is this. Parents are horrible judges about whether or not they're being abused. Our conscious brain loves our child and does not want to face anything bad about them, so we make excuses. Oh, they just have a bad temper, or it's their raging hormones, or whatever else. The chances are, as a parent of an addicted child, you are being abused. Well, let's take a look at some of the telltale signs to watch out for, shall we? By the time children are getting ready to enter puberty, they pretty much have figured out their parents. They know what makes us tick. They know how to trigger us. They know our vulnerabilities and our weaknesses. Then puberty hits, and with puberty comes a biologic imperative. The biologic imperative is where they have to come from the family collective and establish themselves as a unique, sentient human being in their own rights. Part of the biologic imperative means that they're going to experiment with undesirable behaviors. Yelling, being mad at their parents, slamming doors. This shouldn't be an all-the-time thing. It should be a very rare instance, but they're still required to experiment with it to some degree. So you have to accept that as some degree. Most children will outgrow this by the time they're in their middle teens. And those children who learn coping skills, anger management skills, what is and is not tolerated behavior through the use of boundaries and consequences, outgrow it much sooner. A huge warning sign for you, though, that you may be dealing with an abusive individual or that you may be being abused is if it starts before puberty, that's no longer the biologic imperative. And if it lasts beyond mid-teens, that's no longer biologic imperative either. Biologic imperative has a very unique, specific area for the rebellion or for the differentiation to occur in. Does that make sense? So we just talked about how the offensive behavior should fit three categories. The first category is that it should not last for a long time. Raging hormones does not result in long-lasting offensive behavior. Abuse does. How it should not be a frequent visitor at your house. Raging hormones come and go. They're here and then they're not. And they're not for a long period of time. If it's a frequent visitor at your house, you're dealing with abuse. You're not dealing with raging hormones. And the last category is that it should not establish a pattern. If you can look at your child and know, if I try to enforce these rules in the house, this is going to be the response. Or if you're walking around like they're a stick of dynamite with a lit fuse, that's abuse. Perhaps an example will help. Let's say they come up to you and say, Mom, Dad, I would like some money. And as a parent who's very concerned about your addicted child, what are you normally going to ask? What are you going to do with the money? Well, I want to go out with some friends and have fun. Okay, what friends and where are you going? Mom, Dad, I don't have to answer that. Just let me have some money. No, I don't think that's a good idea at this point in time. And you know, if you do that, the pattern is they're going to go off. It's going to start off with yelling and screaming, then move to cursing, then cursing you. Then it might move on to verbal, physical, emotional, abuse, or smashing things. That's a pattern. If you know that's going on, you're being abused. The third area I would like you to consider when you're trying to figure out whether or not you're being abused is your own intuition. You're smart. You're intelligent. Okay? You know what's going on. There's a book that I really enjoy that's called The Gift of Fear. It's all about how our subconscious is able to pick up on all these signs and indicators, and it tries to warn us that we're in danger, that something's not right. But then our conscious brain tries to talk us out of the idea that we're in danger, that something's not right. And it's this dichotomy that leads parents to be able to say, no, nothing's going on here, and live in complete denial, while at the same time their subconscious is telling them that they're in danger, that things are not right. So based on that, if you are feeling like you're having to walk on eggshells in fear of offending him or her, that very feeling is telling you that you are being abused. Listen to your intuition. In the end, you are the free moral agent for your life. You get to determine what you will accept in your life and what you will not accept in your life, what you'll allow in your life and what you will not allow in your life. The one requirement, though, of being a free moral agent is that you understand that everyone else is also the free moral agent of their life. Your addicted child is a free moral agent of their life, just like you're the free moral agent of yours. That means the decision to abuse you was just that, a conscious decision, a choice made by the free moral agent of their own life. They do it in order to get something else. Normally, in the case of our addicted children, they do it for power and control over you. Why do they want power and control over you? To support the addiction. So what this whole thing is about, developing a support system for their addiction. They made a choice to abuse you in order to support the addiction. You make the choice on what you will and will not allow to continue in your life. You don't deserve to be abused. You did not cause this abuse. It was their choice.